well over 40 participants, I think going up to 50 participants. So thank you very much indeed for taking the time to be with us this afternoon. A few other bits and pieces for your diaries and things to note. First of all, I think all of you, hopefully, will be aware of our postponed event, SNS 2020. I'm delighted to say that's now scheduled for September 16th and 17th at the Norfolk Showground. Tickets are on sale now online on the EAGLE website. And we do have actually 1 or 2 stands remaining now as well because of the rescheduling. So if you would be interested in booking a stand, do let us know. And again, there you can find all this information on the EAGLE website at eager.com/events. We're also planning another offshore wind week. Those of you that have been to that in the past will know what a success that's been, growing each year. Last year, as you know, we opened up a number of facilities, a number of visits that we organised as part of Offshore Wind Week, with control rooms opening by both Scottish Power Renewables and SSE. We also opened the Skills Centre at East Coast College, Lowestoft. We also have visits to Three Sun, and we also have visits to the ports, and some vessels were on show as well. We're hoping to do similar kinds of things. So as yet, the full list of venues haven't yet been finalised, but we'll be doing that shortly. And if you put those in your diary for 22nd and 23rd of October, a huge event, book early to avoid disappointment, because it did book out last year quite early and sells out every year. Skills for Energy 2020 is on the 25th of November at the New Energy Skills Centre at East Coast College, Lowestoft. Make sure that's in your diary as well, please. Just to say that my team have been very busy working in the background, putting some additional skills resources there for you. There's a lot of bored young people at home, my granddaughter being one of them, who constantly FaceTimes me, hopefully not during this. But to say we put a whole load of resources on there for students, for teachers, and for parents. My granddaughter is actually using this resource as well. So there's worksheets, activities, videos, all on there to try to ensure we have engagement with STEM subjects, along with information around careers and teachers' continuous personal development. If you have any resources that you'd like to share with other people, do let us know, and we'll add that to that page or elsewhere on the EAGLE website. And the address for that is skills@eager.com. Also, we obviously have a survey that we've been running on a regular basis, on a weekly basis, in association with our friends at the LLP. Basically, we're collecting data from across the energy sector, right the way across oil and gas, renewables, nuclear as well, just trying to ensure that we're feeding into government and feeding into the local authorities the issues and concerns that you have. So do make sure you keep us informed via that survey, or just drop us a line. The link to the survey is there, but please take that survey on a regular basis and update us with any issues, concerns that you're facing, or things that you don't think government are addressing currently that you think urgently need addressing, and we'll forward that on. That goes via the LLP into BAYS, a number of government departments, local authorities, and MPs. So that's an essential way in which you can have your voice heard through EAGLE. Just a quick user guide for Zoom. For those of you that might not be quite as familiar with it, as you can see down the bottom left of my screen and your screen, hopefully as you're looking at it, is your mic button. So if you could keep your mic closed for the course of this until such time as we get to the Q&A session. And what I would ask the Q&A session is to start putting your questions in now via the chat facility. So at the bottom of your screen in the middle, you'll see there's a word chat and a chat bubble, speech bubble there. If you click on there, you can then start asking questions now. So do make sure you feed your questions in, and we'll try and address as many of those as we can during the course of the afternoon. So can I ask you, as I say, to ensure your mics are muted during the course of the presentations. If I can ask speakers to turn off their cameras when not speaking, that just helps hopefully with the bandwidth and ensure that we have a smooth service. And as I say, please ask questions from now onwards using the chat facility, as I say, in the middle of your screen at the bottom there. So as I say, I'm absolutely delighted to be able to welcome Sue Falch-Lovesey, the local liaison officer and skills champion for Norfolk, Vanguard, and Boreas from Vattenfall. Sue previously held senior positions within skills and education with Norfolk County Council, the National Trust, having completed a BSc in Environmental Science at the University of Stirling. Sue's also a qualified teacher, holding a postgraduate certificate in secondary education. So don't do anything naughty or she might tell you off. So Susan practices what she preaches as well, I'm delighted to say, having previously held positions as a school governor and still serves on the steering committee of the Houghton Hall Education Centre. And today Sue will be sharing her thoughts on the subject of skills, talent and shaping the future workforce. This is to be followed by an update on latest skills requirements in Norfolk and Suffolk from Paul Warmington. Paul's the Energy Skills Development Manager at Suffolk County Council, also working collectively with the LEP, with EAGA and other stakeholders right the way across the energy sector and the skills sector in the region. Sue and Paul will then be joined by a panel session with our very own Gemma Head, Skills for Energy Programme Manager, and Rachel Bunn, Assistant Principal at East Coast College, responsible for apprenticeships and employer engagement. So please ask questions, as I say, via the chat function at the middle, at the bottom of the screen. So without further ado, I'm going to close my presentation now and hand over to Susan. Susan, over to you.
Thank you very much, Simon. I will just share my screen and here we go. Good. So, excellent. Hopefully you can all hear me well. If you can't, just send some sort of message through the chat and I'll be notified. Thank you very much for that introduction, Simon. So actually what I'm going to do today, I'm going to share a presentation that I originally gave on the 5th of March, and that was just before the COVID lockdown, for the Westminster Energy, Environment and Transport Forum. And it was a fascinating opportunity. I had never done one of these forums before, but I learned as much, well, I learned a great deal. It was chaired by Lord Ravendale and Professor Ron Loveland, and I was the last presenter, so following a fascinating set of really short, exciting, interesting presentations. People like Matthew Hilton, he is a head of strategy Maze, Steve O'Gada, who was director of Lisbon, the director of Kirsty Houston, who's fascinating, head or vice president of innovation for the National Nuclear Lab. And there was certainly much later on, but it was very, very interesting. I think Dr. David Cole of Atkins summarised much of it for me. Engineering.
Interrupt you, Sue. I just think the sound's playing up a little bit. I'm not sure if, can you just turn your microphone off and on again and we can see if we can get it working?
Certainly. Or I can talk a little louder and closer, maybe, if that helps.
Yeah, it sounds all right now. It was just breaking up a little bit, but we'll give it another go.
Thank you very much. That's all right. Do say again if I need to change anything.
Yeah,
so, I think David Cole, Dr. David Cole of Atkins summarised it for me that engineering net zero relies on innovation, system interdependencies, sector integration and unprecedented build rates. But what my presentation was about, and what we're going to talk about today, is about how skills, talents and attitudes needed this growth. What are they? And my presentation will cover a lot of the skills area. Offshore is important net zero. And we're really galvanised. I think we all know that. You can see that. We're focused on working with government, the supply chain, the education and skills establishments, and to maximise the opportunities and overcome barriers, including the evidence skills gap. And we'll talk a little bit about that today. We need a more diverse workforce. We need a local workforce. And today's discussion is how we're going to achieve that, hopefully. I only have about 15 to 20 minutes, so we're going to cover these areas. Now it won't move on for me. Oh, here we are, maybe there's some delay. We're going to cover Vattenfall and the offshore wind context. thinking a little bit about advanced technology and also how skills is not just about what we know, it's about our ethos and attitude. We're also going to talk about labour market intelligence. This is the absolute vital starting point, and we'll look at 4 levels of market level intelligence. What, where, when we need it, and how we map it from now and into the future. I'm going to share a Vattenfall skills framework that we've developed. This is how we organise and communicate and map how we will be shaping our future workforce. It's based on Norfolk, Vanguard and Boreas, but maybe it has broader application. And then finally, we're going to look at one case study. That's all we'll have time for. But the case study will have active opportunities, real life problems and inspiring impact, hopefully. So a little bit about Vattenfall and the context. First of all, you'll all probably know it's a 100% Swedish state-owned energy company, and it operates across Europe. In the last 10 years, we've spent £3.5 billion of investment in the UK, and we plan to spend a further €5 billion in renewables in Northern Europe by the end of 2020. Norfolk projects, Norfolk Vanguard and Norfolk Boreas, are worth each of them multi-billion pounds. So we're a fairly large player in this whole area. And it's not just about wind, of course. For Vattenfall, it's also about heat networks, solar and battery. And we have international strength in electric vehicle charging, carbon dioxide-free steel, and hydrogen is very much on the radar. So we can't go into detail on this, but you will know if you've ever heard any of my presentations that I very much believe in what we in Vattenfall are doing. We absolutely believe and we exist to help customers live fossil-free fuel futures within 1 generation. That's hard to say, and it's also quite hard to do, really, because it's all about decarbonisation and innovation, but it's as much to do about people and behaviour. This Vattenfall context actually colours everything else we do. The skills work, how we develop our own people, and how we work with people. Now, it's also worth thinking a little bit about pace and scale, because this adds dramatically to the context. But it's this pace and scale that will enable net zero by 2050. And it's a long time scale we'll need to be working with. Through development and construction and operation and decommissioning, we're talking 40 years. And our workforce will need to span that time from the short, medium into the long term. And we'll have a great interdependency with our supply chain. And that's an incredible, important relationship. All this will be impacted by innovation, digitalization, system integration, all the things that are happening now on our doorstep and others we don't know about. So, with this in mind, I thought we'd start with labour market intelligence. I had to do quite a lot of research into this. I was interested anyway for the presentation I gave at Westminster. But I believe it really is sort of data-driven in many ways, that we can be strategic about this. And it's a vital starting point, and it works at a number of levels. We're going to have a look at all these, at least 4 levels of this now. And at least we have, I think, as a group of people, and especially in the East, a foresight to know that we need to work together if we're going to maximise the positive impact that we can have. So there's absolutely no shortage of UK level labour market intelligence. And when you get this presentation, you can see the live links. You just hover over them and you can go to each of the documents. But just a very quick run through. So in 2020, the EU Skills Report, Many Skills, One Vision, it sort of suggests that at least 20% of our workforce will be retiring within the next 10 years. The Aura Report, 2019, tightest labour market in 40 years and an intense competition for talent. 2018, and the biggest survey that we do in the world, actually, UK does, and this is the Employment Skills Survey. 87,000 employers feed into this, and it suggests that the highest density of skills shortages are going to be in construction, utilities and manufacturing. And of those occupational shortages, we will find them in electrical engineering, skilled trades, technical, digital, complex, analytical. So actually many of the areas we all know we need to recruit into. And then the National Centre for Universities and Businesses, it's a very harsh reality, but 20,000 engineering graduates short every year, but only 12% of professional engineers are women. So we've got a little bit of an impact to have here, and bearing this in mind, and the fact that there's an expectation that we have local content, so big projects like ourselves that can change the face of how we live and work in the UK, you know, we have to take a great deal of responsibility for this, and local content's very high up on the agenda. So let's have a look at the scale down now. We look at wind, and the offshore wind sector deal has some specific intelligence they're gathering at the moment. Celia Anderson, who we'll all know, leads the offshore wind sector deal workstream, investment in people. And this is bringing together sector intelligence at the moment. One of its jobs is to bring this together in something that is based on the National Skills Academy for Rail, the NSAR model. This model is going to be really interesting. It already is. There are 11 very large players and 8,000 people now within this database, but we need more. We need more to get the regional granularity, and especially in the east of England. So please, if you'd like to feed into this, then both Iga and Celia will help you to access it and feed in. The more we feed in, the more intelligence and data we'll have, and the more it'll be useful for us. It can be interrogated in many different ways, and I've seen a snapshot of that, and we don't have time for that today, but maybe there's a follow-up session that we can have on this. As it develops, then obviously the content will make it more useful. On a regional level, we've also, and thank you to Paul Warmington, who we'll hear later, and I'm not going to steal too much of his thunder here because I'm just going to show two slides from this. But Pite 8 have been commissioned to do a regional piece of skills legacy work. It's a very detailed piece of work, and it's been commissioned by New Anglia LLP and county councils, and many of us have fed into this. It points to the urgent need for upskilling and training in advanced technologies. And it talks of lead-in times, and we'll have a little insight into that. But even just on the slide you can see here, now, you know, with the one side, employers unable to find technical training aligned with future needs. And on the other hand, you know, the training providers sometimes unwilling to invest without guarantees. You can really see that some of the outcomes from this study is going to give us a lot to think about. What I find most fascinating are these two diagrams, because I think they illustrate the broader view perfectly, and why it's important to consider how we can work together to achieve an enduring skills legacy. And we need to turn this competition for talent into gateways of opportunity. And how do we do that? Well, it is by really understanding what's happening on our doorstep. And we need to make sure it works for, of course, young people, but all people and people of all ages. So here you'll see that the major projects are mapped. And you'll also see that if we want a group of sort of new recruits into our industry for 26 and 27, where all the projects there hopefully are happening and are in construction and are starting to come about, well, we need to start working with year sixers now to prepare them. So it's sort of quite a nice way to track back. What the regional colleagues say, and what Paul assured me, was that we need to expand our pipeline of new entrants. We need to use projects themselves as a catalyst to inspire and motivate, and we need to start early. And he also mentioned that it isn't an exact science, and we'll hear more from Paul a little bit later. So I thought that was very interesting to share. And then lastly, the fourth level of labour market intelligence, probably almost the most significant. It can boost dramatically the national, regional and sector intelligence because it's so very detailed. And this is project developer specific intelligence. Now, this is not easy. I started 3.5 years ago, and the first thing I sort of suggested after speaking to our skills professional on the doorstep is, oh, you know, can we just have a list of the people we might need and our skills and supply chain might lead into the future? Because that's what they're asking for, that's what they need. Of course, it's not as easy as that. These are multi-billion-pound projects. We don't have consenting yet for the Norfolk Vanguard project. However, my colleagues are working very hard on this now, taking a French model and forensically looking at our needs, near needs, medium-term and long-term needs. And we're looking at job area, role, qualification level, the FTEs, the duration, and the qualifications that are required. And we think this is a very important piece of work that will be able to feed in to the intelligence levels. So I wanted to, at this point, say a quote, because I used this quote also in the Westminster briefing. I was talking to Rachel Bunn just a couple of days before doing the Westminster briefing. And I said, well, what's important? What top policy recommendation would you like to give, Rachel, if I've got the chance? And she says, to understand future skills, needs and profiles now, so we can future-proof. It works best when partnerships are formed and that they are proactive and not reactive. And I think this is the approach that we in Vattenfall are trying to have. It's clear that collaboration is key, that we don't develop programs for people, we develop programs with people. And we are open, positive, active and collaborative in how we do that. So the final bit of the presentation is going to be a little bit about our framework that I'm just sharing now, and one or two little case studies. This is the skills and talent framework. We sort of just created it. We've created it for Norfolk, Vanguard and Boreas, but it's a way of organising and communicating our gateways into working with Vattenfall. How colleagues might come to us, how they might work with us, how they might leave us, and how hopefully they might stay with us. And it works for all ages and stages. And this is the simple map, because I have got a much broader map which maps it to all of the Vattenfall programs that exist internationally as well, because I needed to show alignment with those. And of course, we want to be building on those programs. And within this, you have gateways from the informal, primary and secondary. And as a developer where we are, we're at consent at the moment. Of course, we are doing more work in Gateway 1, 2 and 3, but we shall be doing much more work regionally in Gateway 4, 5 and 6. So you will already know a little bit about our peer-mentored primary programmes, maybe. Haven't got time to talk about those now, but we have them. Our collaboration with the STEM Hub, and of course with EAGER, our Ogden Trust input into the internships there. And also, of course, we have a year in industry already based in London from UEA, and that's Angus, and many of you might have met Angus, and that's been our pilot to see how we can do more year of industry. And I'm really happy to say that this week we've approved, and we've started actually, our first apprenticeship transfer, and that is to a company within our region. And we needed to trial and test just all of these areas so that if we and when we have a project, we can really take off. So the case study, let's have a little think about this, because we only really have time for one. And I hope this one just shows how we have enabled early collaboration, and we co-develop our programs. Our approach is to inspire authentic experiences. It's really important that our programs are valuable to those that are involved, and that it's a win-win, that we do things together and everybody wins from this, and that they're well evaluated, because if we are going to scale anything up, they need to be based on that well evaluated sustainable models, so we can build that capacity efficiently. And I've chosen the work with University Technical College because actually it was one of the first programs we started, and it's had a little bit more impact beyond UTC with many other colleges, and it's meant that we've had a very nice working relationship with East Coast College and other colleges and the university in our area, University of East Anglia. And what I'd like to say is this 3D virtual reality program uses industry standard tools, and that's a theme that we use in all of our programs. Industry standard. We're looking to the future. What will our young people need to do with us in the future? Well, let's start using that now then. And they get a really good feeling for a project, so they feel they're in it. At the end of the day, they really understand all the consenting constraints and costs, and they come out realizing it's quite complicated actually. they said to me, well, we can do this better than you, Sue. It's the young people. So now it's peer mentored. So I don't deliver it, but young people deliver it to other young people, and they are phenomenal. And the second generation now of young people delivering are being inducted. So it's peer mentored, and we're thinking about succession planning. And good programs can obviously attract other funding. And so this attracts now the Institute of Engineering grants and IMEC grants. So we can broaden it to 20 more colleges, schools and colleges. And we're still collaborating through COVID situation. So each week we have a little webinar using Teams, and colleagues and young people now are redeveloping this program to deliver it through using technology instead. So that's the sort of example, and really good skills programs, of course, can reach international places, and where we have got high quality programs, then they're exportable. And this program did take a trip to the Netherlands, and the wonderful students benefited, both those in the Netherlands. We worked in two colleges, Nova colleges and Noorderpoort colleges. They're very big marine colleges who will be having links with UTCN and East Coast College, so we're just developing that. But it also worked for us, and it sort of led to us thinking that maybe there's this sort of like a skills interconnector opportunity there. And just like we'd have an electrical interconnector, maybe we can smooth off our peaks and troughs and redistribute people a little bit when needed. Certainly international collaboration is key. And finally, we never lose sight of the student experience. We never take our eye off the student, what they're gaining from the experience, how it will support their career. And we don't have time to play this now, but when you get the presentation, you can click on these two videos and you can see what the students themselves have been doing. Of course, if we want to inspire and attract talent for the future, then it's a two-way relationship. Those students choose us as much as we choose those students. And really now, the very last slide, last but one, diversity. Couldn't finish this presentation without talking about how important this is to our region. We are all better for diversity. We can't ignore whole groups of our population when they've got something to offer. And I'm especially talking about obviously women and ethnic groups and ex-service people. And the picture here is with Kwasi Kwarteng, and it was at Westminster, where we celebrated 1 year on for the offshore wind sector deal just a few weeks ago, just before the lockdown. And this was sort of like a celebration also for the signing of the covenant. And there are, of course, many other developers and supply chain colleagues that are well ahead of Vattenfall here in terms of signing the covenant. But we really believe it's the right thing. And we want to make this and our other diversity elements really work for the East of England. We've got some big challenges to address when we're coming to ensuring we've got the skills for the future, and it has to be a diverse future. So to summarise then, I say that we have a lot of labour market intelligence between us now. It's time to get together and analyse this so very carefully, so we have the right education and skills capacity in the right places designed for the needs now and into the future. It's sort of a bit like data-driven, decisions. We need that to make the good decisions. Secondly, developers with supply chain have a crucial role now in making sure we share our labour intelligence, our skills intelligence. What is it going to look like? Almost forensically, what does that look like so we can plan effectively? And of course, we've had many developers that have gone before us, so we need to collaborate backwards and we need to collaborate going forwards, and with a weather eye on innovation. And thirdly, the offshore wind sector deal and our work with EGA and the New Anglia LEP has also taught us that we're best learning from the experience that exists. We've got plenty of intelligence in which to build our next plans on. And to make the biggest possible impact, then we need to collaborate very, very carefully on these next steps. And so I really want to end on that. And I hope it feels very one way, of course, as I'm presenting to my computer. But I'm really pleased to now have some discussion, and yeah, to thank you very much for staying with us. I'll stop sharing.
Thank you.
Hi, Susan. Thank you very much indeed. I'm going to hand over now to Paul Warmington. Hopefully you can hear me, Paul.
Yeah, hopefully now you've all got a screen in front of you as well.
We certainly do. So thank you very much indeed, Sue. That was a fantastic presentation. I do apologise. We had some problems with the audio a little bit earlier, but it is all being recorded, and hopefully it's being recorded without some of the audio glitches. But obviously we'll make that available afterwards, and we'll also be making any of the presentations that we can available to you as well. So now let's hand over to Paul Warmington. Paul, as I mentioned earlier on, is the Energy Skills Development Manager for Suffolk County Council, also working with the new LLP. And Paul's going to talk to us a bit more about what Sue alluded to earlier, the PI-TATE Regional Skills Report. So Paul, over to you.
Thank you very much, Simon, and thank you, Susan, for your presentation. So Sue there's took us through a bit of an insight into skills and how preparing the workforce for a developer's perspective. What I'll take you through over the next few minutes is how we as a local authority are setting out to maximise the employment and skills opportunity of hosting such major infrastructure developments like the ones that Sue has spoken about with Vattenfall. So for us, it's very much local community and maximising that opportunity for employment, the catalytic effects of the skills opportunity that comes with it. But being local on its own isn't enough. If we are to truly ensure that we maximise these opportunities, people need to have the right skills at the right time to take advantage of these opportunities. And they need to understand that the skills that they're acquiring have a legacy that will endure much further beyond a single project. The one thing we know with these construction projects is that they will end. So that's where our starting point is. So the Norfolk and Suffolk Technical Legacy Study, it is live at the moment on the Suffolk Growth Programme Board website, and a link will come out with when this information is disseminated afterwards. So hopefully you'll all get that, and if you've got any issues, just give us a shout. But I suppose to start with, so why did we commission? It was commissioned by the Suffolk Growth Programme Board and Norfolk County Council to ensure it captured that New Anglia region. We commissioned it to understand what we meant by legacy. In all of our planning discussions as a local authority with developers and alongside Sue and colleagues from SPR and companies as such, we use the term legacy a lot and meant, you know, a skill that is needed in the New Anglia region today, a skill that's needed by a specific project, and then a skill that would be needed in the region after that project was finished. So we wanted to understand far more about that, and PI-TATE came forward to take on this challenge, because it's hopefully, we believe, a very groundbreaking piece of work. So we commissioned PI-TATE to tell us what was on the horizon. We obviously understand the offshore wind with Scottish Power, with Vattenfall, with some of the extension projects that are coming through. We're all looking to round 4 and what may or may not happen there. We obviously have EDF Energy with Sizewell C. But alongside those major developments in energy, we've also got a lot of further infrastructure projects going on across the New Anglia region. So you can see on the slide there that the 7 categories we asked PI-TATE to work on. We've asked them to build a picture of these and understand what opportunities they are. Not only so we can look at how we can help people, as we said earlier, maximise their opportunity to work in these, but also to understand and start to allay concern about the displacement effect these major infrastructure projects may have. So we built this picture, and some of the headline bits coming out of this. PI-TATE found that there's over 1,600 approved and planned infrastructure projects between 2020 and 2035. These are all above the value of £500,000 and with a total value of £35.5 billion. Now that's unprecedented investment in our region. It's not something we've done before. With some of these large energy infrastructure, it's probably something we'll only do one time. So it's a hell of an opportunity for us, but it obviously does carry risks that we've got to look to mitigate. We didn't want to just look at the opportunity that was within our region. We wanted to have a look at the major infrastructure projects that are happening across the whole piece. So on this slide here, we also asked them to look at things like HS2, the third runway if that ever happens, Thames Tidal, projects like that. And the diagram I've used here is probably a nice one to get this across, that we don't look at projects in isolation. The orange ring around New Anglia there, that's the commute zone for Falch-Lovesey. But the other two zones you see there as well, there are commute zones for Bradwell B in Essex and the commute zone for Hinkley Point C down in Somerset. So we're making sure that, yes, we need to understand labour market information for what's happening to us as a region, but also what's going on and looking and ensuring we've got that bigger picture. That will help us as we build a wider, deeper talent pipeline of young entrants and new entrants coming in to ensure that there is legacy within the roles they have. So just moving on here then, so what did PyTake do for us? Well, first of all, as we said, we got them to start to look and understand what's out there. Now, okay, it's science when we're looking at the 0 to 5 years, and it gets a bit more arty as we go a bit further down there. But the best start point was working from the Glenigan database, which is where they have been able to identify the 1,600 projects that we spoke about earlier. From that, they then carried out some employer consultation to understand how likely these were to go, if there's anything that had been missed, and a complete review from that employer perspective of the infrastructure that's already there and workforce already in place. We then asked PyTake to look at who's in our workforce at the moment. What's the shape of that? What does it look like? We then asked them to look at who's entering it. So who in that post-16 environment, what's leaving our FE colleges, what's leaving training and coming in, and what also might be leaving it on the other side, so retirement rates and pieces like that. So we built a full picture of projects coming, workforce and what it looked like, and how that's going to change across that 5, 10 and 15-year time period as well. And these are some of the key messages that PyTake came out with. Obviously, as we've said already, unprecedented investment. This hasn't happened in our region. It hasn't happened in many other regions outside of London either. It's a huge combined impact there, £36 billion over the next 15 to 20 years. So there's a challenge there for us to meet. Not surprisingly, one we probably all knew already, that too few people were entering these STEM occupations. Interesting though was also the conversion rate. So we've got a lot of people entering training in places where we'd want them to be, but we've got a very low conversion rate from them leaving training to actually achieving work within those sectors. So that's something for us to look at. They also identified some urgent critical skills. So some of the projects that are happening now and skill sets that are needed and need to be filled or could be filled by local people. The sufficiency as we move forward, so how we increase, what is a shortage for us and what is a gap. So a shortage being where we're training people but not enough, and a gap being where we're just not doing any of that training in the region. They then looked at some of the reasons behind that and how we can help fix some of this. So curriculum development, and as Sue mentioned in one of the slides she used, it's how we work with our colleges and how we can be more proactive with planning rather than reactive around it. And how centres of excellence, how could they help us? The distributed use of these, looking at what is already available nationally. So we could begin to look at building, as we said earlier, deep, wide talent pools of foundationally skilled people, but then send them across to places to get that top-up training to move them to more specific roles that they're looking for. So a number of key messages. I've only pulled a few out with the few minutes that I've got here today, but you'll find them all in the report. One of the most important pieces of work, as we said at the start, was to identify what was a legacy role. So when I'm sitting with EDF Energy, with Vattenfall, SPR, any of these large developers around a table, and we're looking at the percentage of local workforce, we want to ensure that that percentage is in jobs that had legacy. If we look to some of the lessons learned from Sizewell B, when EDF were building that, a lot of local jobs went to people who were security guards, chambermaids, and that didn't necessarily help our economy in the long term. So we want to ensure we make best use of these projects now. So the report identified 14 technical legacy job roles. So now we can truly say, when we talk about that job needing today, tomorrow, and the day after, they're within these 14 roles. So when I'm starting to talk to young people and we're looking to that 10, 11-year-old and laying the breadcrumbs of inspiration, you can truly say there is a career within this. So you enter any one of those 14 roles. It may not be with the same employer, and it certainly won't be on the same project, but there is a career for your working life across a range of projects there. So again, when you get into the report, you'll see each of these skills, these identified legacy roles are then broken down into a skills file, where we begin to start to map when and where these skills will be needed, what level of additional training is needed at the moment to meet this demand. And we've also tried to look at the impact of technological change and perhaps how we need to be changing there as well. Now, just coming on, I'm nearly finished on my time here. Now, I forgot I'd lent Sue these slides as well, so forgive me for going over them again. But as Sue had mentioned, a couple of examples of a use of this data for us now. We can now say with confidence what we understand is going to be a legacy role. So therefore, now we know what we need looking forward to 2026, 2027. As Sue has said, we can now be going back into those schools, back into somebody who's year 5, 9, 10 years old at this moment in time, and starting to lay those breadcrumbs of inspiration. But more importantly as well, we make sure then that it's a coordinated and strategic program across that person's journey. So we're ensuring that, yes, we've got them excited at 9 and 10 years old, but we carry that all the way through until they're making those post-16 choices with the best available information and having confidence in the information that we've given them as well. This also helps educators, advisors and planners across to really help inform these young people of the roles as they move forward. Another use as well, again, a slide you've just seen with Sue there, through identification of these skill sets that have enduring legacy, through these range of infrastructure projects, and please don't forgive the titles there. I have just put some infrastructure project titles on. It may not necessarily be the order they're coming in, but it's for example purposes. But we can now ensure that we develop a skills training system that delivers those wide and deep talent pools of foundation competence, build on that specific skill set needed for the particular project. But then what we end up with as a region is a larger local workforce of skilled and competent personnel. Go back to what I started with, the right skill at the right time. So we're building this larger local workforce, and therefore we're able to bring more local benefit to our communities, and also benefit to the developer as well, because there is that talent pool available for them. So as you can see, we build on what we've got. We work on those foundation competencies. We bring in the specific skill set that then allows that person to move. And we also concentrate on some of those top level skill sets as well. As you can see, the red line over time gets, that's our talent pool growing. So that's a very brief run through of the PyTech study, why we did it, what we were hoping to get out of it, and how we're going to use it moving forward. If you've got any questions, obviously my details will be coming out with this, and we'll do a bit of that now, I think. But the report's on the Suffolk Growth Programme board, and a link will be shared with everybody. So thank you for the opportunity to share today.
Hi, Paul. Thank you very much indeed. Excellent presentation, and thank you very much indeed for spending the time with us today. I think you're now going to join us on a virtual panel session. So thank you very much indeed for that. As I say, we have with us, Sue will be back with us. We have Gemma Head from Skills Champion, and we have Rachel Bunn from East Coast College as well. So I hope all you guys are there and waiting for a few questions. A few points from me that I picked up during the course of the presentations. One for you, Sue. Working with colleges, how do individual colleges get involved, and who do they need to contact on that front? You said you wanted to widen it out to a number of other colleges.
Yes, well, of course, before consent, we're quite lean on the ground, and that's why we're building capacity and partnerships with maybe a lead college. So for the 3D virtual reality program, it's working with UTCN, and there's Sophie Skip there, and we have opportunity to reach out to about 15 more colleges there. And of course, there might be some budding off of projects that happen from that, probably on the international side as well, but we'll see where that takes us.
Great stuff. And I thought you mentioned the Armed Forces Covenant, and anyone that's out there that's interested in getting more involved in that, do either contact ourselves at EAGER, and we can point in the right direction for that. So Armed Services Covenant, it's a great initiative. We're behind it, we're supporting it. Vattenfall is supporting it, a number of local employers are supporting it. So do please keep an eye out for that, and do contact us if you want more information on that. Alex Pieri asked a question earlier on, sharing of intelligence amongst developers. I think it's something that you alluded to, Susan. How do people get involved? Alex was asking, it's great that the developers want to start sharing intelligence, but how will this happen?
Well, at different levels. On the first level, the offshore wind sector deal and the NSAR model that I mentioned, it's really critical that we start to populate that now, because that will join up with what we hear from Paul, certainly for the offshore wind side of things. So please contact Celia, or actually EAGER, I think yourselves, and you can channel people to be able to add to that intelligence. In terms of the longer term, the French model that I showed on the slide looked forensically at every stage of development, taking into consideration what Vattenfall think through experience they need from developers and through conversations with developers. Now we are in the middle or maybe earlier stages of developing our Norfolk Vanguard and Boreas version of that. And yes, some of it will be guesstimates, but it will be absolutely better than nothing. And obviously we'll be talking to our potential supply chain.
Thank you, Sue.
Just to come in on that, Simon, sorry.
Sorry, go ahead.
Just as well, so any project going into a contract for different auction also has to enter a supply chain plan to support their project. So we as local authorities work alongside BEIS and the developers at that time as well to ensure that where we have multiple projects in a region, there is a look across all of those supply chain plans to ensure if there's a collaborative opportunity, it is being taken. So that's another way that works as well, through those supply chain plans that support CFD auction.
I mean, there's probably some opportunities to spot where any of the biggest gaps are going to be. I think, where we can have 80% impact from the 20% of effort, if you see what I mean. So it's probably some heads to get together on that. And we have just launched today, actually. Catherine has authored a fantastic report on supply chain response. So hopefully she'll say a little bit more about that later, but that's on LinkedIn.
Yeah, we're hoping to have Catherine and or other representatives from Vattenfall at a future event, so keep your eyes open for that, and we should have Catherine and her colleagues on for that. I think this one is next one I have is for you, Paul, which is from John Best. Thank you for being online, John. John's asking about environmental planning on legacy roles. He's imagining that environmental planning will need to underpin everything, and he quotes a nice recent quote: "The economy is a wholly owned subsidiary of the environment." So a little bit more about legacy jobs. What can industry do to help promote that, and what can government do to help promote that, please, Paul, and the rest of you on the panel?
Yeah, no, of course. Like, I think John's point is quite right, and environmental aspect will underpin all of this work as we go through, and certainly as we look to round 4 coming through, and we're looking at more and more connections becoming ashore, and how we best handle that, how we best work with communities to ensure they're not adversely affected by this as well. So a lot of work will be done in that. The PyTake work itself, we looked at technical legacy. So that was looking within these projects itself. So hence why I think the question there, John, you know, it wasn't picked up, but we weren't looking at that area specifically. But I think you're right. I think it does underpin completely. Your question there, Simon, is how industry can help. It's no different to what Sue was saying there about sharing of information. And we understand it's incredibly hard to look 5-10 years ahead. There'll be jobs 10 years time that we haven't even thought of. But what we've got to try and do is get the best information we can to move from this reactive system towards a proactive system. So the model from offshore wind, and we know nuclear sector is doing very similar work as well through their sector deal. We obviously as local authorities are trying to support that, and through yourselves at Eager feeding in as well with the information you guys get from all the companies that have around you. It's just important that we share this data and we're all working towards that common goal, as I think we are at the moment.
It's certainly something that we're picking up on at Skills for Energy, and through Eager and everything that we do. So that feed in from a variety of organisations, including Vattenfall, we're gathering that information together and making sure that wherever possible that's being fed back to the education and training providers. And that we're looking at those legacy roles and things as well, because too often we're looking just specifically at the engineering side of things, whereas actually the roles that we need to be considering are much wider than that in addition. So there's still a lot of work to be done, but certainly there's platforms there, including ourselves, which can assist with that.
That was Gemma Head, Programme Manager for Skills for Energy at Eager. Thank you, Gemma, for your contribution there. And Rachel, we haven't heard from you yet. Just to say, Rachel, are you there, and do you have any comments so far?
Yeah, I am definitely here. I think it's just reiterating everything that's been said. It's about how us as a training establishment can work with the sector, future-proofing that pipeline in terms of partnerships, rather than working in silos. I think obviously the sector can forecast what's going to happen, and working with the education as a partnership will only help everybody involved and help that pipeline.
Yeah. Thank you very much for that, Rachel. So another couple of questions we got coming up on the chat. Someone's alluded to the fact that there are technologies not currently in the market, but along with the amount of innovation that's coming through as a result of the climate emergency call, we need to articulate some kind of programme to address these changes that are going on, and asking for any suggestions there. My own personal suggestion to that point would be to come via Eager. I would say that, wouldn't I? But and to also go through to Eager, we can put those points through to people like Offshore and Renewable Catapult. We can take it through to the Oil and Gas Authority if it's on in that area, and obviously the NIA, Nuclear Association, if we need to as well. So we can act, if you like, as a sort of filter for you, and we can certainly give you contacts in those various organisations in any of those points. Another question I've got here is there a plan or a way to track the student's journey from 9 years old to their career choice to see how engagement has had an impact? That's a great question. But can I pass it around the panel? So Paul, Susan, Gemma, if I could turn to Rachel first, perhaps. Rachel, would you like to have a crack at that one?
Yeah, what I can say is at the moment, the college, working with providers such as Eager, we're doing a lot of STEM primary school work. And the view is that we will track those students through and continue a STEM activity every year with those groups. So we can then profile where we think they're going in terms of career choices, but also map it as soon as they hit 16 in that FE sector. That's not to say it's going to be perfect. We do need to look at how we can transition that through, but we will need the buy-in from the schools to make that a mandatory feed-in rather than localised work.
So if I can
Gemma.
pitch in there as well. So, so for us, I mean, we're continually discussing this, and we talk about skills events and things of that nature on how we track their impact on students. It's a difficult question, but we are, you know, in terms of tracking destination data and things, there's also a lot of regs around data protection and GDPR and everything of that nature as well. But I mean, that said, well, just in the last couple of weeks, actually, we've been looking at the destinations of some of our students that have gone through the Energy Skills Foundation programme. So we've had, I think, just over 280 students go through that programme now, and looking back over LinkedIn and things of that nature to see where they are. It's really interesting to see the number that have gone through into the industry. So there are some mechanisms that you can kind of use in some ways to pick that information up, but yeah, it's a difficult measure. And actually, we looked at one of the challenges, so particularly for John, I imagine, but looking back at some of the previous EAGER initiatives and Skills for Energy initiatives, the High Energy Schools Challenge, looking at that, we were only saying actually it'd be really interesting to see where those students are now, because I think that's going back sort of 7, 8, 9 years. So, so to see if they've now gone onto an energy pathway of some description.
Susan, Paul, anything to add there at all?
I'd just come in and say, I think there's some very good, John's just put on the chat, so people out there like developing experts and other people that are in that inspiration space. There's a lot of good tracking software that measures engagement. So that's one way we can measure as we go through. I think some of the challenges ensuring there is a coordinated approach to this. As we're all probably very aware, STEM itself is a bit of a muddy puddle. There's so many people out there offering some form of STEM inspiration, and I think one of the challenges we're all trying to meet is ensuring that that is strategically done, so hence use of the PyTate data and other data coming through as well. So we're really trying to ensure that we're pushing the right information. I think your only real measure is going to be when we look in 5, 10 and 15 years time, saying how many more of our local community achieve roles in these industries that are here for us. That's the only true measure, unfortunately. But we can do a lot of activity measure now, and then from a sort of policy perspective, we can all work towards that common goal of having a strategic inspiration approach.
The only thing I'd like to add is evaluating impact. It's very important. You know, whatever programme you do, whichever programme we do, we build in mechanisms to evaluate the impact. At the scale we're doing programmes at the moment, in sort of like the pre-consent phase, yeah, we sort of like know the young people that we're working with, and we're sort of seeing how they're progressing and where they're progressing. So we're keeping a very close eye on that. Of course, that will become impossible if and when hopefully things take off. So, but setting the mechanisms in place to evaluate that impact, whether it's a simple programme or it's looking at whole careers, yeah, it's very important.
Thank you, Susan. We do have some other questions that are there. What I'll do, because we've run out of time, sadly, but what I'll make sure we do is we'll ask our panel to address any questions that are left over, and we'll make sure that we feed those back out to everyone that's subscribed to this webinar. So thank you all first of all, a virtual applause for all our speakers. Thank you very much indeed to Sue Falch-Lovesey, Paul Warmington, Rachel Bunn and Gemma Head. Thank you for your participation today. I hope you enjoyed it. It's not easy, as you say, speaking to a computer screen, but well done all of you for doing it, and thank you for doing it. I really appreciate the participation of all the delegates that have joined us today as well. I hope you found it useful. It has been recorded, and the presentations will be made available to you offline separately and sent on to you afterwards. Do let us have your feedback. That's really, really important to us and to our speakers. Everyone wants to know, what subjects you want us to cover, how this particular webinar went, what subjects and which speakers you'd like to hear from for the future. Thank you very much indeed, ladies and gentlemen, for allowing us into your homes and into your offices. We thoroughly enjoyed doing this for you today. I hope it's been useful. Please stay safe. Keep your eyes out for future EAGER webinar Wednesdays. Thank you very much indeed, and goodbye. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, bye-bye.